All right, so we've covered a lot of the topics that the Democrats like to talk about and the news media like to try to make an issue out of. And so I started this entire little series out saying that we needed to wake up and do something. There's plenty of evidence, there's plenty of facts to back up pretty much everything that I've said in the videos that we've been doing. And now it's time to actually start trying to find some solutions. And like I had alluded to in another video, you can't solve 100 problems at the same time. Some problems actually build onto other problems. So if you start trying to solve them simultaneously, you're not going to get anything done. In fact, you could cause problems in other areas you didn't even think about. So one of the things that I do, and pretty much any programmer would do when they're faced with a problem, is first you have to identify all the pieces. I think we've done most of that. There's still some things to discuss, but I think that I don't want to get too far into the weeds and lose fact of what we're trying to accomplish. But you typically figure out what the overarching problem is, and then you break the problem down into pieces and you solve each individual piece so that when you're done, you get this cohesive, uh, in my case, program that solves or does whatever it is that you're trying to do. But you don't just start writing a whole bunch of code that does a whole bunch of different things all at the same time, because you'll end up with a spaghetti of craziness. So we have, all of these different topics that we've been discussing. And so, in my opinion, the first thing that we need to solve are the political aspects of what we're dealing with. We can't solve the problems of education and all the other things that are going on right now with the current political status that we have going on. So I want to take a minute to kind of outline a few things that are going on for those that don't think about this. But we have people in Congress that are there to pass laws and to make our lives better. They're there to keep the government out of our way, let us work, let us prosper, and they're supposed to be protecting us. They're not supposed to be controlling us. But for almost the entire creation of our country, the politicians have taken advantage of us. They've done things that they should never have done. They've added laws and things to our plate that we never asked for. A perfect example is when Barack Obama got elected. And don't take this the wrong way, because I don't give a crap whether they're Democrats or Republicans. In fact, I'll give you another example of something that was given to us by a Republican president. But when Barack Obama became president, one of the big things that they pushed for years while they had control of the House and Senate was health care. And it was kind of funny because all the conservatives were standing around going, "What are you talking about with health care?" Yes, there's some issues with health care, but they were more stemmed from rules that the politicians had passed in the past, like insurance companies not being able to go across state lines. I mean, that was the most ignorant. I still to this day, this rule exists, and I don't know why. Like, I don't understand the logistics behind keeping all the insurance companies small and not being able to work across state lines. And it gets so bad that I have employees in 3 or 4 different states, and at the time I was dealing with the insurance for everybody, and a lot of times I had to have different insurance companies for different states, and it's just, I mean, it was ridiculous. So, but that's the things that they pass and give to us. We don't understand why, and then they turn around and tell us that they need to solve this healthcare problem. And the majority of America didn't give a shit about healthcare. They made healthcare an issue, and the media backed them up, and we ended up with this 2 years of craziness talking about a subject that we had plenty of other problems that needed to be solved. Education being the number one, but they didn't focus on education because they can't They already have a monopoly on education. They already control us through education. So they didn't need to mess with education. What they needed next was more control over us, which healthcare gave them. Because at that point, then they find out what's wrong with everybody, and then they can start, controlling who does what and when. And so that was what they focused on. The problem with all of this, and I'll use AOC as an example, or Maxine Waters, or whatever her crazy name is. These people, like AOC was a bartender. She's never had a real job in her whole life. So she goes from being a bartender to somehow tricking everybody into her area to voting for her to become a member of the House or Congress. I think she's in the House. I try to ignore that person as much as I can. But anyway, she gets elected to politics. She is now wealthier than she's ever been in her entire life. And if she takes the course of Nancy Pelosi and Maxine and Joe Biden and all the rest of the politicians that are up there, she will become a multimillionaire by the time she gets out of the politics. And the problem is you take these completely ignorant people, you put them in a position of power, and then you can never get them out of power. And you say, well, yeah, but Glenn, you can vote. You can just vote her out of office. Except that you have to pay attention to what is going on in the sense that the media, especially in a democratic situation, the media, really 100% of the Democratic side, the media covers for whoever's already in the seat, because they 99% of the time they want to keep that person there because they're swapping friendlies back and forth. So this person ends up in a position of power. They were never built for that position before getting there. They could just talk shit, which is what all of the politicians do anyway. So they're gifted with the gift of talking shit, and then they get in a position to be able to tell everybody else what to do. And the problem is that nobody, once they got in that position, including me, maybe I like to think that I would be strong enough to not fall victim to that. But most people, especially weak-minded people, they get in that position. They never want to give that up. It's a drug, and they all get addicted to it, and they want to do that for the rest of their life. And they'll do anything to stay in that position. So all the money, all the media, everything is behind them. And so for someone else to come in and take that seat from them, it's a very, very difficult thing to do, if not impossible most times. I mean, look at Nancy Pelosi. There's got to be smarter people in San Francisco. But somehow that crazy woman has held her seat for her whole life. She's so old right now, and Joe Biden's another example. But they're so old that they've lost touch with reality, and yet they still win these seats. They can't even have a conversation with anybody without starting to scream race, at the first sign of disagreement, and yet they still hold their seat because it's so hard to get them out of office. So before we start solving the bigger problems, which are, in my opinion, the number one is education, but before we start even messing with that stuff, I did mention that Republicans were just as bad. So as an example, on the Republican side, real quick, George Bush, when he started all the wars and all the stuff, and we went into Iraq and Iran and all this bullshit that we got involved in, one of the really interesting things that they did is they passed the Patriot Act. And the Patriot Act, and I'm kind of pissed off at Trump about this. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he didn't do this, but I could have swore it was another one of those little brief mentions in the news media, and then they stopped talking about it. So I'm pretty sure it probably passed again. But they gave us the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act is the most unconstitutional thing that our government has ever done. In fact, I'll throw it up above health care that Obama tried to do. So the Patriot Act is absolutely the most unconstitutional thing ever done, and yet every president since then, Barack Obama, the Republican, Trump, all of them continue to pass that law and claim that they need the Patriot Act in order to stop terrorism. And the problem with this entire premise is that you couldn't point to a single thing that the Patriot Act has stopped. You could go back after the fact and say, oh yeah, well they attacked this and now we have all this information and we know how they did it and what they did because we've been spying on every damn American citizen in the damn planet. You could say that, but that isn't a good excuse for me for spying on me and you and everybody else that's in America. That is unconstitutional, it's unlawful, it's illegal, and yet they do it every single day, and they have these FISA courts. They use the FISA court against President Trump, against his campaign. In fact, I'm hoping that there's going to be people going to jail because of the illegal shit they did with the FISA court, but we still passed it again. They still put it up and renewed it again so that they could continue to spy on us. They have huge data centers that they're storing all of our emails and other information in so that they can go back and get anything they want to on us. And I'm not in any way thinking that they haven't already used that information against other campaigns to stay in power. Because like I said, these politicians are hell-bent on maintaining power. They'll do anything. They will destroy this country in order for them to maintain their power. Because Nancy Pelosi on a good day would have been, if she wasn't in politics, would have been a checkout clerk at Walmart. The woman has the brain power of a squirrel. And yet somehow she has accumulated all this wealth and power by being just an evil, hateful woman. And it's time for this shit to stop. So having said all that, what I think needs to happen, and I'll give a little bit of history. So back 10, 20 years ago, we used to have some states in our country that passed laws stating that Congress and the House and Senate had limits to the amount of time that they could be in that seat. So they limited the Senate, I think, 2 terms and the House 4 terms, but it essentially gave them roughly 8 to was it 12 years that they could have been in office, something to that point. And what happened is you'll find this amazing. So the House and Senate limited the presidency. They said that it wasn't fair or it was unhealthy to have someone maintain the presidency for more than 2 terms. And so they limited the presidency, but they didn't limit themselves. They said it was unhealthy for the presidency somehow, but not them. So just like always, they get to vote on their own pay. They get to vote on all this other bullshit. They don't live by our rules. They have their own set of rules that they live by. All this stuff has got to stop. But here's what happened. So the states, the federal government wasn't going to pass these laws on their own. So the states started passing laws limiting how long a politician could stay in office. And so the politicians saw what was coming. I think at the time 7 or 10 states or maybe 13 or 14 states had already passed laws limiting how much time they could stay in Congress. And the politicians sued the individual states. They took them all the way up to the Supreme Court, and they got a ruling for them illegally, unconstitutionally, because the Constitution doesn't say that states can't do this. In fact, the whole purpose of the states being broken down the way they are is because they're the ones that give the federal government power. The funny thing is everybody, and it's all been handled just brilliantly, because the federal government gets all the money, and then they turn around and send the money back out to the states. So instead of having the states giving the money to the federal government, you have the federal government turn around and giving it back to the states. Well, what happens when you have that going on? Well, what happens is that now the federal government says, hey, you're going to do this or we're not going to give you the money. And there's threats of it right now with this virus thing. You're going to open or we're not going to give you the money to pay your teachers. Which, in this particular case, I'm totally not opposed to, but I think that, we need to do something about this. And the politicians or the states tried. And when they went to the Supreme Court said that the states did not have the ability to limit the time for the senators to sit in office. And they really had no basis for this in law or anywhere else. They just made this up. Well, the dumbass Supreme Court people, which I don't think that should be a life appointment either. There's so many problems that we need to fix in this country that it's mind-boggling. But we got to start here. So we need to. They overturned the thing. They kicked it out, and they said they didn't have it. Well, the thing is those Supreme justices, they're not in power anymore. They're gone. They're dead. Some of them are dead. Some of them are just gone. So we need to go back and do this again, because I hope that if on the second run that we can actually have the Supreme Court stand up for this happening and get these limits on these politicians, because Ted Cruz has got a bill right now that he's pushing to try to limit Congress's time, and we need more of the senators to support that and either pass it in the House, or we need to pass it in one of and we only need one or two states to pass this and go back to the Supreme Court and have it hopefully get upheld instead of overturned. But it's the only option we have. We either pressure the hell out of our senators and get them to pass their own law saying that there's a limit to how long they can be there. They did it to the president. It's only fair that they do it to themselves. And if that fails, or at the same time, we need to pressure the states to start doing, to start passing the laws here. Now, this gets back to a whole nother problem, and this is our problem. This is the problem that we are faced with. And you're going to have to start pushing this video and the other videos out to people and getting more people to watch them, because we have to organize. We cannot accomplish anything that we want to do by sitting on our asses and not figuring out who to contact and actually contacting them every single day. We need to call them every single day. They should not be able to use their telephone system because we are overwhelming them with one request. We don't need to call them and talk to them about education and police and all this other bullshit that they like to try to cloud everything up with because they want us to stay unfocused. We need to focus like a laser on term limits and call the politicians, email the politicians, write letters to the politicians, get your local neighborhood involved, get everybody involved. And people, listen, this is not a black and white issue. This is not a racial thing. This is not anything. This is the people of the United States taking our country back. We cannot allow the politicians to continue to control our lives. They are there to protect us. They're there to manage things when they get out of control. They're there to deal with the big issues. They are not there to pass all these crazy ass healthcare laws, education laws, and all this other bullshit that they're doing. We've got to stop them. And the only way to do it is to get term limits, forget everything else. Don't even have a discussion about anything else. If you bring up term limits and somebody wants to start talking about something else, just stop talking. Just listen, we're focused on term limits. Let's solve this problem, and then we'll discuss what the next issue is. And we need to go through it that way. We cannot allow them to get us distracted. We cannot allow them to make this a racial issue. We cannot allow them to have blacks and whites fighting each other while they take over and rape every single one of us and take all of our money and all of our stuff. So focus. I'm trying to figure out, because here's something that I did yesterday. I live in Georgia, so I went to Georgia. I found the guy that was over my district, and I got his phone number and his email address. Right now, I have emailed him today. I plan on calling him, and I'm going to start calling him every single day, asking where we're at with the issue. Is he supporting it? I haven't heard anything about him supporting it. I need him to support it. I need him to take care of this problem, and that side. So from your House and Senate, you need to find who is your district, and it takes a minute to go into their website because it's not, you basically have to put your address in, and then it'll tell you what district you're in, and then you have to go find out who is over that district. And for some reason, the House and the Senate people look like they're different districts or different. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how this stuff works. As I figure it out, I'll do another video to explain it. But you have to go find your House representative, your Senate representative, and then find out who is up here in your local government that we can start to contact about passing a local, statewide mandate or constitutional amendment to say that terms are limited. We've got to get those three things done. And we've got to pass this video around or make your own video. I don't need to be the front person of this whole movement, but we've got to get a movement going. These dumbass leftists, they have a movement, and they're about as dumb as dirt. So we need to go and get our own movement, and it needs to be focused like a laser. Don't get tied up in a whole bunch of other issues. Stay focused. Term limits. Let's get this done.